All right, hello and welcome to the Coaches Corner brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where you can join the coaches live as we recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and I'm joined by coaches Taya Friedstead, Ian Murray there running around, Mitch Tangerman, and our nutritional therapist Andrea Cullen. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Good
morning.
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 Excellent, excellent. So just a reminder to all you viewers and listeners, we are live on several different platforms today. So it also gives you a chance to be part of the show by asking questions. So jump on live and be part of the show. But we'll get this all shared out, but we do have a great lineup of topics. Our titles go today. We're going to talk a little bit about season goals, back-to-back rides, and some fun training toys. And that's what Coach Ian there is rounding up. So we're actually going to start with that. We're actually going to start with that as I get this shared out. But we'll go around the room while Ian gets all organized, and all of us brought a little bit from our training rooms to talk about, and maybe you guys could add your favorite training gizmo or toy in the chat as we get this all shared out to all of our friends online. So who wants to get started? Maybe oh, I know Andrea had a fun one that not really getting used. We'll start with the useless one. How about that?
Yeah, these are the Finis arm fulcrums, and they're meant to improve your stroke so that you have a better
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
pull. And they're horrible. I found they didn't do anything. So these are an indestructible dog toy. Arm fulcrum. That's the only thing she hasn't broken yet.
So, Andrea, what are they called again for those who are not seeing us on video?
So the brand is a Finis, and it's an arm fulcrum.
Okay.
And it's like a little figure 8, and it's meant to help you get into position. But I found, maybe I'm already in position, I just didn't find it any use. Although the other
you can
Finis,
also not be in position with it. I've played with them a little bit.
have you? Any
Yeah.
good?
I mean, it's easy to not be in position with them too. You can still collapse collapse your elbow. So all it really does is the only thing good about it does keep people from bending their hand
Yeah.
to not a straight line with their forearm, but it doesn't do anything about collapsing that elbow and getting rid of that high pull.
So put them on. How do they work?
So you're in.
Oh wow. Huh.
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
like you've broken your arm.
So you
type
need
thing.
2.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, you do one for each hand.
There you go.
So Jason just wanted to see both of them.
I like it. I like it.
I do like the other Finis items. Their paddles. I find very helpful. I haven't used the ticker, the timer though, like the metronome. What
Yeah, I hate
ones?
that. I think that thing is stupid.
Yeah. But I'm assuming Ian has everything that I have, so I've just shown you the useless one. Like I have all the usual pull buoys and paddles, and the gym. In the gym, we the kettlebells, the free weights, the bench, the jump box, the over bar bands, tiny
Nice.
bands, rumble roller. It's kind of all accumulated over the years. You just keep adding.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
Yep.
see. Mitch, you got one? Did you reach for one there?
Yeah, so I've got the Stride running power meter here. So I for years ran with a foot pod because of one race, which was the Detroit Free Press, a half marathon. It goes underwater at one point, so
Oh.
you lose GPS for a mile. So I always had a foot pod just so I would. I don't know. I don't think that mile was that important, but, especially for a non-pro. But then I think Ian got it first. I think Ian spoke well of it, so I got the Stride to start running with power. It'd be great if Zwift actually would incorporate that in some way, but I think it's a great tool. I've done a running FTP test with it.
Nice.
I think it allows you in wind and elevation and everything to really try to keep a consistent power or pace, called a normalized pace. Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, so there's a couple things with it. One, I found that the foot pod is much more accurate than the GPS on the watch anyways. There's a guy who did a study on it, and he came back and showed that the Stride pod uncalibrated is pretty much the most accurate thing out there in the market.
Wow.
And calibrated, it's dead on if you take it to a track. As long as you don't link it up with GPS, or if you get on Zwift, don't calibrate it on Zwift, because what it's going to do is calibrate to your treadmill, which is wrong.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. Use it uncalibrated or calibrated at a track, but it's pretty good. The power side of it, is it true power? No, it's not. It's algorithmic power based on accelerometers. But more importantly is it's consistent.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. Consistent.
So you're not measuring true power. So you can't necessarily equate it to your bike power, although it actually lines up fairly well, for me at least. But the key thing with that is you can, when you're running up and down hills with it, or if you're running on trails where there's lots of woods, your GPS pacing is going to be off. So you can use the pacing for the foot pod and maintain consistent power with that foot pod as well when you're using stride. And the other thing I found, when you're running on different terrain, you can actually see how much more power you have to put out, or how much more effort you have to put out to run at speed on soft terrain, so trails and dirt and grass. Nice. So it just shows you the effort level you have to put out, where it wouldn't normally catch it if you just base it off of pacing.
Yeah.
So practically, have you found that it's helped improve your training, rest recovery, performance, all of the outcomes that you're looking for?
So what I found for me is that it's been really good as far as longer distance, keeping my form and keeping myself in check. And so it's definitely helped me for speed work. I mean, I look at the data later, but when I'm running a flat out 400, I ain't looking at my watch.
Yeah.
But for actual training itself, I think I'm getting a better handle on like running TSS type concept using the power, vice trying to use running TSS through training peaks, which is based on pace, which terrain is too much. It dictates that too much, or weather, or heart rate, which we've talked about before. That's got its limitations as well.
Interesting.
So Taya, you're gonna stand up and have your Airlax boots on? Is that what you got on right now?
How about maybe we continue on the things that we use for training, and then we'll go into recovery.
Sure. Okay.
But as a cyclist here, really the things that I used are the usual, right? It's the bike computer, the Garmin, and stuff like that. Nothing fancy.
Nothing fancy except for the 10 computers that make her Zwift computer setup. Okay. All right. Training aids for actual. What do you got, Ian? Not recovery.
I have one or two.
Yeah.
That I'll show. Reach down into my bag of goodies.
Like Santa Claus over there.
The first one I'm gonna bring out is this. It's an elastic band, and people go, "Oh, it's an elastic band, big deal." No, it's actually great. So when you have to travel for work, or you have to travel somewhere where you don't have access to a pool, you strap this bad boy across the ladder, throw in a pull buoy, just goes around your waist, and you have an endless pool.
Oh wow!
Oh,
that's against you. So you have an endless pool. It's fantastic. I absolutely hate this stupid thing, but it works well when I have to travel a lot.
What's it called? What's its actual name, Ian? If people wanted to look it up.
That's it.
You need an Amazon link with that too.
Stretch cords.
There you go.
Stretch cords. That's the brand.
So basically holds you in place when you're swimming. You could do it in your bathtub then.
So what I found was really good at this. It does teach you to get away from having a pause in your swim stroke, because if you have a pause and pull, you start bungeeing. And so if you want to try and keep consistent propulsion,
I like that,
and getting that stroke rate turned over quicker. So otherwise, I have before bounced backwards into the
into the wall,
into the ladder. So there is a longer version which I actually recommend, but this works as well.
So Ian's wife puts that around his waist when they're at like theme parks to make sure he doesn't get lost. Pull him back.
That's true. That is true.
He keeps going for ice cream.
My Roka swim shorts, which I love.
I have a pair of those as well.
Nice. If you suffer from adult onset swimming like I do, you tend to have poor body position. I like to say it's just because I have no body fat, so my hips sink.
It's true. It's true.
But that's not the case. It's poor body position. So what this does actually, for me, this is great. Especially when I lived in warm weather and I had nowhere I could swim open water, or if I couldn't put a wetsuit on because the water was too warm. I could get in the pool and swim like this, and it basically simulates the wetsuit position for my body. So then when I had to race in Denmark in a wetsuit, even though I hadn't been swimming in a wetsuit, that slight kip up of my hips, I'd been compensating for that for about 2 months by swimming in the pool with this. Plus, it makes you faster in the water.
Nice.
It does. It actually shaves off a good 3 to 5 seconds of 100. All right. Ta-da! All right. So this is a swimming snorkel, and these are.
Can you put it on?
I can put it on.
That looks like the ones my kids
Oh,
use for
yeah,
swimming.
yeah. So it's like a regular snorkel that you would that you would use, but it goes right in between your eyes. And
Yeah,
then
it's vertical and
yeah.
it's straight here in the center, which is
Yeah.
great. So these things are great, but sometimes they're not used properly. So the big thing with this one is when you're trying to work out kinks in your stroke, a lot of people struggle when they're breathing to one side or the other.
Right.
When you're able to do this, like I love doing this with pull sets because then I don't have to focus on anything except the actual pull and getting that good high catch, and I can just breathe in and out. The other thing is you can work on your timing with this for your breathing without running the risk of waterboarding yourself. So you can really work on the timing, or you can screw your timing up really, really bad. And then lastly, I like to use these on kick sets so I can keep a good position. Because what I found for us, again, who didn't grow up swimming, when you use a kickboard, you tend to tilt your body up a little bit, and your hips drop, and so you get out of a good position. Whereas if I use my snorkel, I can hold a good, position and kick away and not have a problem with that. There is something you need to learn with this. You either need nose clips or you need to learn how to slowly breathe out your nose to not suck in water when you breathe in. I don't use a nose clip. It's not necessary, but if you don't have experience diving or practicing doing it, you're probably going to suck in some water in your nose first.
My kids
The
do
other part
like
is you
flip
can do
turns
flip
with that,
turns
I
with
think.
these. People say you can't. You can. You just have to slowly get a little air bubble in as you come out, and then you one big push out.
Yeah.
So don't let that keep you from doing flip turns with this if that's what you're more comfortable with. So yeah. All right.
Yeah. My kids always complain about the flip turn, but they learned how to do it.
Yeah. It's great. All right. So these are swim paddles, right? But they're a little smaller if you notice. I have tiny hands. They're not just because they have tiny hands, but they're for basically just the fingertips, right? What I use these for, because I'm not getting as much resistance with these as I would a big paddle, but it does really help me if I come in and I scull improperly or I enter the water incorrectly.
And what brand are those?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also don't torque on my shoulders quite as bad.
Yep.
Oh, what brand are they?
These are Finnis as well.
Oh,
Is it called like a finger paddle? Is that what it's called? What is it? Half paddle?
Yeah.
I think they're called finger paddles or small.
That sounds right.
they're. Yeah, I've had these for like, I don't know, 8 years. Awesome, they hold up. Let's see.
You must have a giant swim bag.
You have anything running?
So for running wise, I don't do a whole lot of the gizmos because you literally throw on shoes. I have my stride pod.
Yeah.
And that's really the only gizmo I use in my watch. There's not a whole lot in there you can do for running gizmos that aren't just absolutely ridiculous.
You have that sock?
I do have a running gizmo. Hold on.
Yeah.
I've got compression socks and compression.
What is this? You run at that?
Aqua jogging.
Oh, aqua jogging.
That's cool.
When you're hurt. And you can't
That looks
run
like
outside.
a baby seat, like one of those that you put in the car.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I had babies.
And I can run in the water.
So this just keeps you afloat?
It's a floaty, yeah. For the aqua jogging. So I have that.
I find them brilliant. I tore my ligaments January 2 years ago, and it was a confidence thing to get into the pool and aqua jog because you feel like an idiot. But once you start doing it, it had me with no running straight back into almost race pace when I got back. That and the cross trainer.
It is so boring. I highly recommend getting some waterproof headphones and doing that.
We've a 50-meter pool, so there's always a load of really good athletes to watch swimming, which is kind of cool.
That's kind of creepy. See, if I was doing that, staring at some people swimming, that'd be creepy.
Women, they cross-gender.
You might make the strange denizens of the pool on slow twitch.
Yeah.
So a couple other ones I want to talk about real quick is that I don't have them, and there's a reason I don't have them. I think they're stupid, or at least silly at this point.
Unabashed honesty.
One is the tire pressure gauge that will tell your computer what your tire pressure is.
Oh, your computer! Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks Bluetooth or ANT Plus to your computer, and you can get your live tire pressure as you ride. Now, for yeah, exactly. Maybe if you're doing downhill.
Yeah.
Or maybe some kind of gravel ride, or if you're out like going to be in Moab or something and doing something all by yourself. I don't know. I can't find a good reason for it other than, you're really, really, really afraid you're going to be down 2 psi.
Yeah.
How much are they? Are they expensive?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. They're so expensive for cars. I can't imagine a smaller unit having to put it on your bike. That's a TPS sensor for a car is a couple $100 each corner.
And so there's one other one. It's made by Aeropod, and it's one that helps give you your drag coefficient. So Aeropod, if you don't know, is like a handlebar mounted power meter that is based off of wind resistance and accelerometer and angle for your bike and things like that. I guess it works fine, but then this one has a drag coefficient measure as if I'm going to change that in the middle of my ride.
Just in case.
So if you are going to be working and you want to work on your aero position and you can't go to a wind tunnel or a track, I guess it's good. But for the most part, for the average person, for most of us out there, get yourself a good bike fit.
Yeah.
And don't wear baggy clothes, and you're pretty much going to be good to go. And don't have just random crap hanging off your bike. So I do laugh because I'll see people, who want to really work on their aero position, and then they have like a gypsy wagon on their bike.
Or 10 kilos overweight.
Yeah, well, that too.
It reminds me of that video. Is it like in the aero position, like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of those.
So there is an actual reason for that tool, but for the average athlete, they don't need that tool. So I don't recommend spending $200 or $300, whatever it is, on that kind of thing.
All right.
200 per tire by Quark.
Wow, 200 tire. Yeah. But it is by a reputable group, I guess, by Quark. All right, let's slide on over to recovery. What do we got as recovery? I've got one simple lacrosse ball, one of my favorites. Use it all the time. We have one in each car. We have one in each room. So Rylan loves to throw them around too. So, but it's a fun thing that you could have kind of everywhere. So that's my favorite tool here at the house. And what else?
That's a good one because it's very targeted. So if you have this one area, let's say I used to use that when I had shoulder issues. So for my shoulder blades, I would lay down on top of the ball and have that, or even against the wall, you could do it.
Yeah.
But so it's essentially, it's the size of a tennis ball, I think, right? And it's
harder.
super hard.
Yeah. I have this, a softball, a tennis ball, a wine bottle. Wine bottle's good for hamstrings.
Wine bottles.
So
After.
Good for strength.
He said plural too. I mean, so there's a whole stack of wine bottles.
You gotta have different sizes. You can't just have one size. All right, what else we got?
So I have it here. This is a foam roller.
Yep.
And this is the one that has the trigger points, what they call it trigger points, which is essentially raised areas so that you can get more pressure as you do the foam rolling. At first, if you're new to foam rolling, this hurts a lot. I mean, this hurts no matter what, but I guess you get used to it over time. But it's fairly small because then I can use it in different parts of the body. I would like to have a longer one because this one is hard to use on the back. But I have over time, and I'll ask you guys what your take is. I have stopped foam rolling. I used to foam roll quite a bit. And when I had a lot of aches and pains from, believe it or not, yoga, somehow I used to pull my tendons and muscles and by going too much into the poses. But and also when I was overtraining, right? Meaning I was just doing too much. And my legs were painful. I used to do the foam rolling, but I find that maybe the foam rolling is injuring my muscles further. So if you have a very sore muscle, let's say, the ones that you can't even walk without pain, that to me indicates that muscle is really, really sore. You have a lot of micro tears in your muscle. Would foam rolling make that worse?
Yeah.
Because you're further injuring that muscle. So I would say be very careful with foam rollers.
I would agree with that, and a hard massage as well. It's like going deeper into a wound. It makes more sense to me to work on the other tissue to improve circulation and clearance without overly going into the bit that's really sore.
I think I see a tiger tail down there at Ian's house. It is.
So,
oh no, he pulled out something else. He's like a
This
magician.
is going along the line of trigger point. This is also a trigger point, but it's a quad roller. It's really good for the IT
Nice.
band. But this is a little torture machine.
Yeah.
If you can't tell by looking at it, it's actually
Wooden.
narrow at the end, and it comes up to almost like a point in the middle.
Ouch.
Right? So you can just you lie down on this and roll back and forth
Side to
on this
side.
little point on your IT band, and
Wow.
it is enough to make you cry.
So do this
also
when you're
works on the
healthy
quad.
and not painful. That's the takeaway here. If you have
Right.
pain,
Well, so
and-
the
yeah.
only time I use this is if I have a lot of volume, especially in running,
Yeah.
and I feel my IT band really tightening up.
Yeah.
And so I'll generally do just a little bit on this to kind of work out some of the knots in there.
Makes sense.
And then I get into something I know Taya's going to cover. That's where I spend most of my recovery time.
Yes.
So before we go there, when we're talking about further injuring the muscles, when we're trying to recover and we're doing self-massage with foam
Yeah.
rollers and other toys, you got to understand that stretching could also be dangerous.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you have a very sore muscle and you have the tears from working it too hard, let it rest until that acute pain goes away. Because if you, again, stretching it, you're further stressing that muscle. But yeah. Oh, we're going to go into the boots.
Yes.
Yeah.
So compression boots. If you have done research on recovery, believe it or not, compression boots is probably the #1 recovery tool out there.
Wow.
That is actually efficient, that will help you. Why is that? It's because the compression mimics your body's natural way of recovery and healing, meaning it reverses the flow of blood, right, and oxygen back to your core, and then fresh again back to your muscles. So the legs, you put the boots on, and that's what the boots do, is they compress, they get that blood flow up and then back down, because it serves as, think about your body. You have the heart, which is pumping blood to your body, right? But you don't have another heart anywhere in your body. So you work your legs. I hope not. You hope your like a horror movie. You work your legs, and that's actually the function of your calves. If you didn't know, your calf muscles function as like a little manual compression muscle, just like the heart. As you walk, it pumps blood back in. That's why, having somebody stand for hours and hours is a form of torture, because you're having the blood pool in the legs. So and that's also why simply just sitting there to recover isn't a great idea. Walking might be good to have, again, that blood flow. So that's what the compression boots do. And I'm a big fan of it. And I'm
too.
probably in them all the time, right, Ian?
Yep.
That
And
makes
there's a-
sense. So move the lymphatic system as well, because it's the valves in our legs that prevent, you have to move to push the blood to get it through each valve and
Get up.
back. And then the lymphatic system isn't even driven by the heart, it's driven by movement.
Right.
So wow.
Yeah,
they sound
Linda
awesome.
on Facebook says she likes her balance board. So she
Yes.
uses that in a disc.
I like that. Those are
Those
cool.
are good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will. Can I get into brands for should we get into brands of the boots?
Yeah,
I just want to
sure.
mention that. So the #1 famous brand out there is Normatec, and if you have ever looked into it, it's quite costly.
Yeah, it is. I'm just looking right here.
Yeah.
Ian's
Check 'em out.
midget shopping.
Yeah. But I use another brand. It's called Air Relax, and it is a fraction of the price. And I've used Normatec before, and it's the same thing. So there you go. Here's an idea for you if you're looking
And
into
I have
compression
the Air Relax boots too.
Yeah. Not
Love
just recently. Like, I know both of you guys have had it for a long time, and you've worked.
Oh,
with
yeah.
them. Yeah. So.
almost daily use for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very
Wow.
nice. I think it does work to exactly what you would need to get blood back. I mean, obviously we have a pressure system that pushes blood out to the body, but our body naturally brings blood back in a natural way with our muscles. So in order to get it back, I mean, you could put your legs up on a wall, you can do all these other things, but this is a pneumatic pressure that would mimic the movement of, the body is where it's at. It makes sense. Science is behind it.
And you might fall asleep when you're doing it.
That's what I hear.
yeah.
That's what I hear.
Unless you bring it up to level 3 on the compression.
Yeah. Or the targeted one. You can use targeted. So let's say you want just the thighs. Yeah.
All right. Very nice, very nice. Any quick ads before we switch gears here?
Yeah, real quick. So there's also the electronic stimulation type therapy
Ooh.
recovery.
This is for after recovery.
Yes, yes. So it's also good for injury, but you have to have someone show you what you need to do for injury for
Right.
recovery. But you can use them for just regular. And so I have my little machine here that I like to shock myself with.
Why does that not surprise me?
And it has electrodes that you can hook, to your body parts, your shoulders, your legs, your knees, whatever. But it also comes with these cool little shoes.
Yeah.
Now, they just look like cheap, crappy flip-flops, and they're not comfortable to walk around in. But they have little diodes in them that will send electric pulses through.
Like it.
And so what's interesting is when I was running a lot, I would do this, and it would kind of help. It's like a foot massage. But this is my caveat when you use one of these electric stimulators. Be careful with your power level that you put it on. And when I was wearing these boots, I was actually trying to walk around for a minute because I had to go grab something, and it kicked in, and it took my calf and just went. Oh yeah, it was worse. It was like the lower part of the calf, so like my Achilles and up through the calf, they were just like locked up. So it took a second. I think I fell over.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I've used the one that had the electrodes that you put in your it looks like you're in a hospital, right? Because you have the things glued to your muscles. And I think the theory behind that, the theory behind it is what is it called? The electric waves, they're supposed to develop more capillaries. Mm-hmm. And with that, you get better blood flow to the area. But I don't know. I've used a little bit of it. I found that for back pain, that was more helpful than for recovery.
Yeah, and I found like when I have some knee pain, for me it just stimulates a little blood flow. Mm-hmm. And if I'm really bored, it's also fun to watch my quad just like fire.
I think there's lots of sort of different electrical or pulse waves for different sort of things. Like that sounds more specific, or like you would use TENS or electrical stimulation for injury. And I suppose knowing when, because sometimes you don't want to increase circulation if there's a lot of edema or swelling. I use the pulsed wave therapy in the clinic with the PEMF. That works a different way, where it's increasing energy into the mitochondria, which is then elevating the mitochondria's ability to do whatever it needs to do. And then that's PEMF. And then there's another form of energy treatment, like the biomass, which is far infrared on amethyst, which is something that would be helpful. Far infrared gets into the cells differently. So that's sort of like a whole body re-energizing. So then when you're giving the body what it needs, the body then does what it, uses its own innate intelligence to then do the healing or that it needs to do. But these are very interesting therapies. I suppose acupuncture in a way is trying to stimulate those natural energy currents. And why we need them more these days is that we live in a world where we're getting bombarded by other wave frequencies through Wi-Fi and 5G, 4G, whatever everyone's going, microwaves, and all of this.
Andrea's extra training tool. She has an aluminum foil hat that she wears.
With glasses. Love it. All right, so that's a great roundup. But if you have a training gizmo that you didn't hear or see today, I can't imagine with what Ian has at his house, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. We'll put a couple links of the funner ones so you can get a chance. If you're just listening in, you'll get a chance to see some of those. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Being February here in time is when we're recording this podcast. This is the time when a lot of riders are trying to sort out their season, maybe put down a season goal or kind of an idea of what they wanted to do moving forward. And so what we're hoping to talk about was how to kind of stratify your year or some sort of annual training plan, and kind of how to make sure that you're building for the right different things. Not every ride and every race and every weekend Sunday crusher is going to be your A race. Every week you cannot race yourself through the season, or at least we don't recommend it. So we'll talk a little bit about that and kind of how many events we should have and so forth. So we can jump straight into there. What do we got?
So I'd say you said something really important there. You said, what are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is really step back and say, what is my goal this year? because I think that's going to really kind of define everything that you're looking to do, right? I mean, and you can have more than one goal, but you need to actually sit back and think, what do you want to do this year?
Right. And I think even within the goals, we should think about it separated maybe into two little buckets. And I like to go with through this with my athletes. What's your goal? Outcome driven goal. Like, do I want to place this? Do I want to that sort of thing? And then what's your process goal? What are you going to change in your training, your discipline, or the process of getting to where you want to make it to this outcome goal, and how you can meet those two and adjust those as we go. And you could even have these for each event and try to put that into yourself mentally so that you're making goals, because there's only one winner of every race. We can't all be Ian Murray's. So there's only so far we can go. So you have to have some other outcome goal and at some point. And then your process goal is something that you work with your coach, something that you want to do better, make small steps to reach bigger goals.
Yeah, because then also with the process goals, you know that you are moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what it's all about. You're better today than you were yesterday, right? So you're moving forward, you're improving something. You learned something in the process.
Absolutely.
So when you think about, I think one of the things that came up in the forum this week was the having an annual training plan. And this is, so then once you have your goals, you might think, okay, how do I plan my year so that I am in top form for when that big event comes, or if I have two big events? And if you are one of those athletes who have big events that you are going to call your A events, the recommendation is that you have 1-2 of those, because if you have too many of those, it's going to be tricky to be at your top form training wise for more than 2 events. So typically they fall into the outdoor season. They might not. Maybe you do road in the summer and cyclocross in the fall, and you have A events that way. But I think, having those A events and then building everything around it, and then having the ramp up as you get to that event, etc. And then the other events, you might do some B's and C's. And the B's, the B's might be your practice ones. So let's say that you're going to try crits for the first time this year, and you have an A event in July, say. Then you're going to do some maybe training crits or crits that you're going to sign up for that are not as important to you. You just go in to get that skill, to get knowledge of that type of race, and train that way. So having your A, your B's, and your C's, and then as you plan your year, you would of course have to peak, what we call peak, which is getting into peak form. And peak form is different than tapering. That means you are at your best for the season, but your legs are not tired. They're fresh enough so that you can go and crush it. Then for the B events, you don't do the same. You can do a recovery week before your B events. So let's say you sprinkle those through in your calendar. Make sure that the week before that B event is a recovery week. And then for C events, the least important ones, let's say you have, then just train through it. Exactly. Yeah, just be careful though if you decide that it's a super hard 2-hour race in Zwift and then your legs are shot the next day. You need some recovery. So
But I'll qualify this. If you have a C event and you're training through it and you beat people in there and it was not their C event and they actually tapered or recovered for it, that means you own them. That's the way it works. If you crush somebody on a C race that you trained through, then you own them.
I like it.
I have a question to the coaches on you have your type A personality and they have their A race. But what are you advising them on regarding the B and C races, mentally more than anything, or intensity wise?
All the races are A's for the A personality.
Yeah,
it's very challenging.
That's true. And so I recommend for A people and people like myself, we don't do C races. Or B races. I take that back. I will do a C race, like if it's a 5K or maybe a 10K that I'll train through, but I'll use it as a training event. And so the last time I did a 10K as a C race, I used it as part of a long run. So I ran to the race, 4 miles. I did the race, and then I jogged back and forth with people to help them finish up, and then I ran home. So it was, like a 16-mile day. but with 10K hard.
Right.
And the rest of the running was really easy. So I use that as kind of a longer run with a little bit of intensity in it. If you want to do C races, like for a triathlete, I recommend keeping it at sprint distance. If you're a long course athlete, keep it at sprint and use it for practicing your transitions fast and for getting some of that fast twitch muscle work going to just bring a little bit of intensity. But then at the end of that C race, I for my athletes generally throw in an hour or 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours of easy ride.
Yeah.
To just add some endurance to it. So you have to throw that. I don't recommend for most of them a B race unless I'm using that as a practice for their main event.
Right.
So I know for like folks like Garen, I like to do it. I love to run a half 6 to 8 weeks before running a full. You know, and I'll blow it out, but I build that into the schedule to blow it out, and then I have recovery the next week.
So you'll manage it off of your TSS. I'm just watching so many athletes at the moment, and they seem to be racing all of the time. And I don't know if they're using something to counter quantify the training stress that's happening. And you kind of think at the back of your mind, are they just going to blow by the time it comes to a race?
Yeah.
It depends. So the way I couch this is if you want to race a lot, right? If you're doing a series, and I know cyclocross has this, crits have this, some road racing, and for triathlon, there's a lot of places that have series. If you want to participate in a series where you're working on the points, then it's about managing load. You still pick the series championship or whatever is your A race, but it's about managing your load in through it. So if you're racing every other week because that's what the series is, then it's train up, a slight recovery, like a couple days easy before you race, an easy day, and then you go back at it. But you have to have that load built up over time. And that's where I think a lot of people have the problem is they don't do any of that pre-race load building.
Right.
They just do base type building and then go into racing, and then they try to race themselves into form. And it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So trying to do something like that your first season is probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so if you watch the WTS, the World Triathlon Series guys and ladies, if you watch their first part of the year, the people who win the first part of the year generally aren't in the mix later on.
Later on in the year.
Okay?
That makes sense.
Except for look, you're going to have the Moras and the Jorgensens and the people like that they're there all year round. They're in the mix because they're just
so good.
I mean, they're just that much better than everybody else. The Brownlees type thing. But even the Brownlees, if you look at them, they tend to do really well. They get hurt, they come back and smoke it. That's their MO usually. But it is about managing that load throughout your year.
Yeah. With
still peaking for that key race, making sure you're on top form for the key race that counts, and then having one or two that you know are like maybe it's Olympic trials qualifier, maybe it's the test event for the Olympics. You know, for that I'm talking for that level. But for us, it's about scoring enough points throughout the year to get into the big dance and do that championship race or however you want to call it. So you have to manage that.
So translating a little bit, for those of you not as familiar with the terminology, this means you have been doing intensity type workouts before you get to, let's say, that series that you're going to race in, right? You have the crits. The good thing about these series, typically the races are short. They're 45 minutes long, etc. So you can't afford to do them. And in terms of training throughout the year, also to be ready for those, we talk about ramping up and peaking for your A event, etc. But then if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go back to our episode 58 when we talk about base training and why base training shouldn't be slow riding for 3 months out of the year for amateur cyclists, for us who have limited hours to train, and why that is. So consider that as well as you plan for your season.
Yeah.
Mental skills as well. You know, we have some athletes, and if it's not a flat out race, it's not a win, it's a failure, and then it's a failure in their minds, and there's so much mental energy going into the practice races or the training races, and I think that can be linked with burnout as well, because you're just using so much of up here when every race isn't a judgment on your identity as a person, especially if there's a main race at the end, which is what actually matters.
Right.
And one of the ways to counter that is don't use your cool guy stuff on those less important races. You know, don't ride your race wheels.
Yeah.
You know, maybe ride the road bike instead of the tri bike. things like that you can then mentally say, well, I'm not going to win this. If I didn't win, I didn't have my race wheels on. So I got that. Or one last thing is, if you're going to do a sprint try, you can wear a Speedo, ride a Comp Cruiser, and then an aero helmet, and that will make it so you're not even in the mix.
Yeah.
But then you can really practice that run and make sure you get a good run in.
Yeah. So for indoor trainers, for indoor cyclists, on our end, for like if you're trying to get an athlete through a C or a B race, a lot of times you can throw a workout in right before, like Ian does. Like running wise, you do a workout before. Try doing an SST workout before a race. You definitely will have exactly the straight suffer. 9 days of 0.9% intensity, and then try to do anything after that. And then I have one more thing to mention. I might come back to it, but yeah, definitely. Oh, and then outdoor events. And people are they feel like every crit they've got to like taper for, and you just don't get the skills that you need to get faster. You get better at showing up to the line and making it, but you don't get faster at trying to get where you want to be. And I think that's what's important for these races that are in series and that sort of thing. So maybe adding something else to that and kind of stratifying. It's so difficult. Our crit series are so long and they're so frequent here. And so a lot of times I'm telling riders to not race, and because when they do get to the line, it's just red mist. And so we go and we watch it and we talk it through and we watch other riders race it, and they learn more that way because I can talk them and show them what their colleagues are doing and who to watch out for it. And when they get back into it, they understand kind of what they're looking for. So tactics and tips are faster in a lot of these races. So,
and a lot of those know the series. A lot of those, it's maybe 10 races, but only 7 count.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone wants to race all 10 just in case they need to drop one.
Right.
Is this something that we can help riders with?
Yeah. Taya, is this something?
A coach is invaluable though, because with a coach, you can twist the goals of the race into not having the outcome.
Yeah.
So you could be setting, I have to achieve something and I just want to please my coach. So then you're helping your athlete. I think coaches are.
So if you have somebody helping you through it, then you're accountable now. You're accountable not only for showing up, but also for taking it back and following the script, right? And if you're not, then why are you paying a coach? And then it's in your pocket too. You're like, well, why am I wasting this money if I'm not following what the coach is saying?
Right.
But yeah, for sure, this is when it can be very helpful because it takes the guessing out of planning. And one other thing to keep in mind is not just for races, right? It's also for big events. We have many athletes who are not racers, but who have big plans for the summer. They're going to go to Italy to ride those amazing roads 5 days in a row, right? And do the climbing that they've never done before. And so getting ready for those as well. That's also part of the planning.
So yeah, if you are interested in that, definitely check out EnduranceLab.fit. All of us are available to help you out with that. And we've got some things in the pipeline that are coming through that should allow you to meet your needs as far as planning, or if it's just consultation. A lot of people like to be self-coached. We've got all different levels, so definitely reach out to us for that. Before we jump off, is there anything else we want to add about planning, goals, anything?
I think we covered. I think, just make sure that your goals are not contradictory. So make sure that you don't want to train for crits and time trials at the same time for the same, season.
I think that's important.
As an A event, you can go out and try whatever you want, but yeah.
I mean, I think that's an important point. I mean, you can't do everything, right? I mean, I have like running goals and I have cycling goals.
No swim goals for Mitch.
There aren't any swim goals this year. That's a discussion in the house right now. But I mean, they're kind of contradictory, right?
Yeah.
So you got to pick and choose. It doesn't mean you can't run when you're biking, but you're probably not going to do your best marathon if you're also trying to do your best time trial. So
it's tough. And that's, I mean, at those guys, at like Ian, Andrea, Garen, all those guys that I try to put three events together. So, I mean, that's
hard. It's really hard.
Absolutely challenging. Excellent. All right. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the coaches today for joining in, and you, the listener, for joining in today with the Coach's Corner. If it's your first time listening, would like to hear more content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search for the Endurance Lab. And head over to YouTube and search the same. And don't forget to click subscribe. For more information on when our next lab is, or more information on what we talked about today about planning your year out for success, head over to endurancelab.fit, where you can learn and you can join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week, and thank you for joining in.